Imagine this. Liverpool qualify for the Champions League at the expense of Manchester United, all thanks to the help of Cody Gakpo. Today, what I thought we could do is settle in, have a lovely cup of Rosie Lee, and discuss Manchester United. Yes, they were excellent last night. A 3-0 win will most certainly be welcomed, and overall, it was a very good performance from Manchester United. Beating Forest 3-0 cannot be overstated. It is exactly what they needed off the back of the World Cup, and I don't think I'm exaggerating to say that they could have quite easily scored 8 goals against Forest again. But they didn't. And that is why Erik ten Hag desperately needs to bolster his attack. Marcus Rashford was sublime last night. Absolutely fantastic. And his technique and confidence is through the roof. Credit has to go to Ten Hag here to a degree, but Marcus Rashford has done so well because he was in a dip, people were questioning him, and he has bounced back and looked incredible. When he went off to a standing ovation at his boyhood club, that was the first time all night that he had walked. He was constantly on the front foot. He was running, gliding, darting, twisting and turning and driving Nottingham Forest absolutely insane. Rashford scored, Rashford created, and I think his performance was slightly overlooked by some. I don't think it was quite fair because Casemiro seemed to be getting an awful lot of credit, and it's not that Casemiro wasn't superb. Indeed he was. Luke Shaw, centre-half, played very well. Varane, excellent. But come on, it was Marcus Rashford's night. So this really was another game last night where Rashford's talent, his work rate, his enthusiasm and his decision-making shone through. His importance to this Manchester United team cannot be overstated, particularly when they are in the midst of a striker crisis. The transfer window is about to open. There is a lot of talk of incoming strikers, but the jewel in the crown is already at their club. So they have to get it right, but the person they need to sign has to be a complement to Marcus Rashford, because under Erik ten Hag, he looks like such a complete player. He has been given a platform by Ten Hag. He's allowed to roam. He is allowed to use his devastating pace to its most full magical effect. So the signing now, the player that comes in, has to be brilliant because he's going to be leading the line for Manchester United, shouldering the burden of being a prime goal scorer for Manchester United, following in the footsteps of some of the very best players to have ever graced the face of the earth. But he has to compliment Marcus Rashford, because Marcus Rashford in this form is a gift to a manager. Erik ten Hag deserves a lot of credit for helping to nurture Marcus Rashford back to this player that he was once before and is now again. And in fact, I would say that this is probably the best Marcus Rashford has ever looked. England's top goal scorer in the World Cup, playing brilliantly for Manchester United. Ten Hag deserves a lot of the credit, but Ten Hag is going to reap the rewards because Marcus Rashford's pace and his versatility across that front line caused Forest no end of problems last night. And having a player at your disposal who can play anywhere across that front line, who can operate in various positions, is such a gift for a manager. A manager as pragmatic as Erik ten Hag will really benefit from a player who can play potentially through the middle or on either flank. It feels weird, doesn't it, talking about a player having a hot streak when the weather is like this. But if you can have a hot streak in these conditions, Marcus Rashford is certainly having it. And Gary Lineker was tweeting. Gary Lineker knows a thing or two about scoring goals. He knows a thing or two about leading a line, and he knows a thing or two about being a complete centre-forward. And the fact that Gary Lineker is saying that Marcus Rashford in full flow is a glorious sight to behold is significant. Rashford is potentially a top-tier player. I remember having this debate many times with Adam McCullough. I think that the general consensus when these conversations were happening was that Marcus Rashford isn't quite the player that Adam McCullough saw. It turns out McCullough was probably right here. McCullough was talking about him potentially being Manchester United's top ever goal scorer. And that, to me, felt a long way off. It didn't feel like it were even a conversation at the time. In this sparkling form, not often I say this, but McCullough might be right. I shouldn't do it to myself, but do you know what thought arose in my head again? It's what might have been. Imagine what would have happened if Gareth Southgate had been less cowardly and deployed Marcus Rashford to charge at Jules Koundé in that quarter-final in Qatar. Can you imagine how fearful Jules Koundé would have been of Marcus Rashford in this scintillating form. However, even with Marcus Rashford in this kind of form, Manchester United still do need to sign another striker, and the fact that they missed out on Cody Gakpo is such a bad look. When Manchester United were at their effervescent best, when they were absolutely unplayable, in fact, we'll keep it in a Forest conversation, shall we? The last time that they played Forest, they had Dwight York, Andy Cole, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who came off the bench and scored 4, and Teddy Sheringham at the club. Teddy Sheringham did not even make the squad. Imagine that. A player of Sheringham's quality didn't make the squad for Manchester United. That's the level that they need to reach again. They need to get to that sort of level. And unless they start operating functionally and decisively in the transfer market, it feels half the world away. So we're now 25 years later or whatever, and there was actually quite a funny incident that happened last night that I think demonstrates the state of Manchester United's striker department. I think we can gauge the feeling around the striking options in the Manchester United fan base if we use quite a funny trolling incident that happened last night. So ahead of the kickoff, the Manchester United fans started to get a little bit excited on Twitter talking about a player called Coutinho. Did anybody else see this? Coutinho was trending. So I've clicked on him. I thought, I've never heard of him. That's weird. Playing for Manchester United, I've never heard of. But Coutinho is number 11 for Manchester United and is available to play. People started being really excited. Manchester United have been clever. They've got their business done in the transfer market and nobody even knew. This is really, really insightful stuff and promising stuff for Manchester United. I saw some Manchester United fans quite comically saying how good a player he was and what he can bring to the team. And he had the number 11 shirt, no less. So the speculation mounts. I'm suddenly thinking, oh my God, this is fairly embarrassing. I work in football, I've never heard of the geezer. So I'm quickly Googling, I can't find anything. It was a prank. I think it was a hacker being mischievous. But that shows you the state that Manchester United are in. You know, if a player like Coutinho was on the team sheet or the squad sheet when Manchester United had the likes of Dimitar Berbatov, Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo, Carlos Tevez, nobody would have really cared. Perhaps you would have assumed he were a youth product that nobody had heard of, weirdly. But the fact that people were thinking, oh, great, there's a player here that could honestly contribute to Manchester United tonight, who we've never heard of, is an insight into the perilous state of the forward options at that club. So Cody La has gone elsewhere. Gakpo will not be playing for Manchester United. He is not an option for Erik ten Hag anymore. A player that is so admired by Erik ten Hag, a player that felt destined for Manchester United, will now be playing for bitter rivals Liverpool. It leaves a gaping hole in Manchester United's transfer ambitions. It leaves a gaping hole in Manchester United's forward options. And it's actually a double-edged sword because I can see a world now where Liverpool make top 4. In fact, I can't really see a world where Liverpool don't make top 4. Having a player like Gakpo who can play in multiple positions up front to be deployed by Jurgen Klopp where necessary to help bridge the gap until Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota are back to elevate the entire front line, Liverpool now will make top 4. Potentially at Manchester United's expense. So, Manchester United are going to need to do something because their rivals are not standing still. So the question becomes, who will Manchester United go for now Cody Gakpo is out of the question? So United's rivals are all moving forward. Erik ten Hag is desperate to keep moving forward and he is determined to add to his attack. But the options now feel few and far between. It's quite sparse out there. Maybe loans are Manchester United's best options, but it does feel like Manchester United have missed out on the statement, marquee signing that they so desperately needed. There is an unofficial message that has been put out to the intermediaries, you know, the agents of this world, who are basically saying that Manchester United are ruling out any dramatic domestic deals. Manchester United have announced to the game that they aren't in the market to do anything spectacular in this window, which could be really damaging for their future aspirations. So if we try and explore this now, but we subtract, we believe them that they aren't going to do anything dramatic, we have to look at realistic, perhaps slightly uninspiring options. Potentially somebody like Does Alexander Mitrovic fit United's requirements? I think he does. In many ways, Alexander Mitrovic could be perfect for Manchester United. Brings others into play really well, plays with his back to goal very well. He's a nuisance for defenders. Would potentially complement Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho when he's given an opportunity, and Anthony Martial when he's given an opportunity. Alexander Mitrovic could be the perfect signing. But it's Manchester United. This feels very uninspiring, doesn't it? Also, crucially, Alexander Mitrovic is contracted at Fulham until 2026, so presumably he is off limits. Things are going very well for Fulham. They certainly won't want to let their main man go, and they're an incredibly wealthy club. Shahid Khan is exceptionally wealthy, so they don't need the money. They're not a selling club. So to prize Alexander Mitrovic away from Fulham now feels very difficult. The other option, which on some level makes a lot of sense, but on another level is completely crazy, is Ivan Toney. The fact that he has an FA charge and a potential ban looming over him for the alleged breach of betting rules is problematic. However, he's class, man. He's a brilliant player. And do you know what? It would be very disingenuous of me to say that Manchester United shouldn't go for him, because I would be desperate for Chelsea to sign Ivan Toney now. Do you know what I think Chelsea should do now? We should pop over to Chiswick, to Kew, which is only a couple of miles away from Stamford Bridge, and drop £40 million on Brentford. We say, look, we know that you've got an issue with your centre forward. We are prepared to give you £40 million for this problematic, brilliant footballer and bring him to Chelsea. And Chelsea have the ability to ride out the ban. So Chelsea can play Kai Havertz as a false nine for the next 6 months, knowing that Ivan Toney is waiting to be deployed in that position. That's what I want Chelsea to do. So it would be disingenuous of me to say that Manchester United should avoid Ivan Toney. So Ivan Toney is an option, but it doesn't feel very in keeping with who they are. And overall, I don't think Manchester United are going to take a punt on Ivan Toney. In fact, I don't think Chelsea are either, which is a shame because he would be perfect for us. But I think a lot of clubs will be slightly fearful about what's going to happen with regard to Ivan Toney and these charges. So they will swerve it. So effectively, what we can conclude is that Manchester United are going to be focused on trying to find temporary or low-cost permanent deals. Look, the market is fraught with difficulty, however, and I don't really know what they're going to do. You know, last summer, as United planned contingencies for the Cristiano Ronaldo departure, Alvaro Morata was discussed. But the 35 million quid that was suggested it would cost to bring him to Old Trafford proved prohibitive. Also, Alvaro Morata is rubbish. So that is one that they did well to avoid. He's also playing regularly for Atletico Madrid. So again, it feels like that one isn't really an option. Aubameyang was also discussed in the summer for Manchester United as the Cristiano Ronaldo replacement, which feels very out of the frying pan and into the fire for me. But obviously, he plays for Chelsea now. So that one is also out of the question. They were talking about Memphis Depay and Barcelona potentially allowing him to leave. I can't believe what I've read here, but apparently Choupo-Moting has 6 months left on his Bayern deal, and Manchester United are considering that. Surely not. I mean, if Choupo-Moting is the answer, you are asking the wrong question. So Manchester United have now boxed themselves into a corner. I think what we need to do is try and understand why United either passed or was slow about securing the Gakpo deal. What can we learn from who Manchester United are today with the knowledge that they didn't get this one over the line? I think basically it's this. They decided that they couldn't afford him, which is ridiculous because they're Manchester United. They are incomparable to other football clubs. You know, they are an institution. Manchester United are a British footballing institution who generate so much money. So, of course, they can afford him if the club were being run properly. But they decided that they couldn't, particularly when there are concerns as to how suitable he is to play at centre forward. I think what they feel like they need is the archetypal, traditional Giroud, Benzema, Mitrovic, the proper centre forward, not somebody who has the ability to be deployed elsewhere. So they have concluded that the player that Gakpo isn't worth the value to them. Bonkers. I think we can get a bit of a clue into how the Manchester United takeover is shaping up, because I think that we can conclude that the Glazers would have sanctioned the spending if they weren't going to be there to pick up the tab. So if my theory there is correct, that means that the sale is not going through. That means Manchester United are not having the interest that they expected on selling this club. Because if they were going to sell, I think the Glazers would be spending now, because ultimately it wouldn't be their tab. The fact that they are not spending leads me to believe that things aren't moving quite as fast as the Glazers would like with regard to the sale. The signing of Antony has also had an impact on trying to sign Gakpo. You know, the fact that Ajax refused to budge on their €100 million fee for Antony, it meant that Cody Gakpo couldn't be signed because the negotiations were going on simultaneously. But the 100 million that had to be spent on Antony meant that there was no spare cash left for Gakpo. So a huge problem for Manchester United here is that one of their main rivals, Liverpool, are so assertive in the transfer market. And it really does paint the picture that Manchester United are completely passive. Like, whether Luis Diaz, Darwin Núñez or Cody Gakpo work out for Liverpool, what we've learned about the way that Liverpool conduct their business is that they are efficient. They get it done. They get it over the line. They are very clever at making sure that their transfers happen. They signed Luis Diaz when everybody thought Luis Diaz was going to be a Tottenham player. They signed Darwin Núñez when word on the street was that Darwin Núñez was going to be a Manchester United player. And they signed Cody Gakpo. And they signed Cody Gakpo when we didn't even know that they were in the market for a forward player. We thought that they were going to be prioritising a midfielder. And then suddenly, bang, the deal is done. Nobody broke the news. It wasn't rumoured on Twitter. The usual suspects, you know, the big accounts weren't telling us that this one was going to happen. There weren't any leaks from the club. Liverpool got this one over the line. They effectively won a race that nobody else knew that they were even in. So that leaves Manchester United looking at players like Mitrovic and Morata and Choupo-Moting. Like, that isn't exactly a list to thrill. And Erik ten Hag has confirmed that price is a guiding principle on the kind of players that he can sign. He's actually admitted that players need to fulfill both a sporting criteria, but crucially, a financial one. It's Manchester United. So in my opinion, it is as simple as this. If Manchester United do not bolster their attack, they will not make the top four. It's going to be very difficult for them, even if they manage to sign somebody. Because when you think about who Manchester United are at the moment, Manchester United's most brilliant front four would be who? I think we'd go for what? Martial, Rashford, Bruno Fernandes and Antony. As a foursome, they never fit all together. I think only twice have they ever played together. And the first time was against Everton when Martial went off for injured. So it's going to be very difficult for them to actually get enough goals. So it's going to be very difficult for them to actually create enough, to score enough goals, to rocket them up the league and into the top four. Particularly when you think about the teams that are, they are up against. So there we have it. It's a weird one because off the back of the euphoria of last night, Marcus Rashford playing so well, securing the 3 points and putting in a very joyful performance against Nottingham Forest. This morning, because of the Gakpo news and whatever else, it feels slightly flat for Manchester United. But maybe I'm being harsh. Please comment below, let me know. Am I being a little bit harsh on Manchester United? Is it brighter than perhaps this video will portray? And if you have any tips, have I left anyone off? Is there an obvious signing for Manchester United to make in the way that, do you remember when they signed Henrik Larsson? And Larsson did everything that they needed him to do. When Chelsea signed Gonzalo Higuain and he did nothing that we needed him to do. Is there that sort of signing out there for Manchester United that will be enough to secure European Cup football for next season? Thank you for watching this video. If you're new, please subscribe. It massively helps me out and it would be my honour to welcome you into this community. Have a lovely day.